Who let you in here? This is a private suite. I'm going to need you to leave right now. The man didn't even look up from his phone when he said it. Just pointed at the door like he was dismissing a parking attendant. The young woman he was pointing at didn't move. Her name was Zara Mensah, 26 years old, black. She was wearing a gray hoodie, straight-leg jeans, and a pair of worn New Balance sneakers that had seen better days. No jewelry except a small stud in her left ear. Her natural hair was pulled back in a low puff, and she was carrying a canvas tote bag that said Toronto Public Library on the side. Nothing about Zara Mensah looked like she belonged in the presidential suite of the Harrington Grand Hotel in downtown Vancouver. That was, of course, the entire point. Let me take you back. Before the insult. Before the door. Before all of it. It was a Tuesday in November, the kind of Vancouver Tuesday where the rain comes sideways and the mountains disappear behind gray cloud and the whole city feels like it's been wrapped in wet wool. The Harrington Grand sat at the corner of Georgia and Burrard, 42 floors of glass and stone, one of the last hotels in the city where a single night still felt like an event rather than a transaction. Zara had walked through the lobby at 11:47 a.m. alone. No assistant, no briefcase. Just the canvas tote and a paper cup of Tim Hortons she'd bought from the cart outside because the coffee inside the Harrington cost $19, and she genuinely did not see the difference. She'd smiled at the woman behind the front desk. The woman had smiled back, the way people smile when they're decising something without showing it. Zara rode the elevator to the 38th floor, found the suite at the end of the hall, and knocked twice. Now, here's what nobody in that hotel knew. Zara Mensah was the founder and sole owner of Cerulean Capital, a Vancouver-based private equity firm that had quietly acquired controlling stakes in 14 mid to large hospitality properties across British Columbia and Alberta over the past 6 years. She had launched the firm at 20 years old with $40,000 she'd saved, working double shifts at a FedEx distribution center in Brampton while finishing a finance degree online. She had never raised outside money. She had never taken a loan she couldn't repay in 18 months. She had never been featured in a magazine, never given an interview, never spoken at a conference. Forbes didn't know her name. She preferred it that way. The Harrington Grand Hotel was, as of 8 weeks ago, one of her properties. She held a 61% stake through a numbered company. She had come today for a routine operational check. The kind she always did herself, quietly, without announcement, dressed exactly like this. She knocked because she was professional. What was behind the door was supposed to be a brief walkthrough of the presidential suite before a refurbishment proposal meeting scheduled for 2 o'clock. What was behind the door was not what she expected. The man who opened it, barely, was Hugh Alcott, 53 years old, white. He had the particular look of someone who had spent 30 years being the most important person in every room he entered and had stopped questioning why. Silver hair swept back hard, expensive watch on his left wrist, the sleeves of his dress shirt rolled to exactly the same point on each forearm in the way men do when they want to look casual and powerful at the same time. Hugh Alcott was the regional director of Callaway Luxury Group, the management company the Harrington's previous ownership had contracted to run the hotel's day-to-day operations. He had held that contract for 9 years. He had grown comfortable with it, comfortable the way a man gets comfortable when he mistakes longevity for ownership. He looked at Zara in the doorway and made the calculation in about 1 second flat. Hoodie, tote bag, Tim Hortons, young, black, female. Who let you in here? This is a private suite. I'm going to need you to leave right now. Still didn't look up from his phone. Zara said, I have a 2 o'clock meeting in this suite. Hugh finally looked at her. His expression didn't change, which was its own kind of contempt. The 2 o'clock is with the property ownership group. Not? He gestured vaguely at her. Whoever you are. I'm aware of that. Then you understand you're in the wrong place. He moved to close the door. Zara put one hand flat against it. Gently, steadily. I don't think I am, she said. Hugh's jaw tightened. He opened the door wider, which wasn't an invitation. It was an escalation. Behind him, the presidential suite stretched 40 feet in every direction, floor-to-ceiling windows with the North Shore Mountains barely visible through the November rain. A conference table already set with water glasses, printed agendas, branded notepads. Two other men sat at the far end of the table. Jeffrey Crane, the hotel's general manager, 50s, thin-faced, and a younger associate Zara didn't recognize. Jeffrey Crane stood up immediately when he saw Zara. His face went very carefully still. Hugh didn't notice. He was already speaking again. "I don't know how you got up to this floor, but I'm going to ask you one more time. This meeting involves senior decision-makers and legal counsel. If you're here about the housekeeping schedule or a maintenance request, you need to take that to the third floor and speak to." "Hugh." Jeffrey's voice came from across the room. "Quiet." Warning. Hugh talked over him. He was rolling now, the particular momentum of a man who has never once been wrong about a first impression. "I've been managing luxury properties for 30 years. I know every person who's supposed to be in this room today. You are not one of them. Now, I don't know if someone gave you a key card by mistake, or if there's been some miscommunication with the staffing agency." "Hugh." Jeffrey's voice was sharper. "But I am Callaway's regional director, and this is a private business meeting, and I am asking you, for the last time, to please. My name is Zara Mensah." The room went quiet. Not because the name was loud, because the name was said the way a person says something when they know exactly what it means, and they're waiting for everyone else to catch up. Jeffrey Crane closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, he looked like a man who had just watched a slow-motion car accident he'd seen coming from very far away. Hugh Alcott looked at her. "And I'm the majority shareholder of this property." A pause, the length of a breath, "which means I'm the one who owns the building you're standing in." The silence that followed was the kind that has a texture to it. The associate at the end of the table set his pen down. A water glass sweated quietly on the conference table. From somewhere far below, the elevator hummed. Hugh laughed. It came out wrong. Too short, too fast, like a sound that had intended to be confident and missed. "That's not." He stopped, started again. "The ownership transfer is still in legal review. The numbered company that made the acquisition hasn't been disclosed to." "The transfer completed 43 days ago," Zara said. "The disclosure package was delivered to Callaway's head office in Calgary on November 3rd. I have the courier confirmation and the signed receipt." She reached into the canvas tote bag, pulled out a single manila folder, set it on the conference table in front of Hugh. He didn't open it. "Your contract with the previous ownership group," Zara continued, "contained a change of ownership clause. 60 days written notice for contract review. My team sent that notice on October 21st. Hugh stared at the folder. "Today is November 19th, Zara said. "You have 12 days left." Hugh Alcott's face did something complicated. The silver in his hair suddenly looked less distinguished and more like age. Jeffrey Crane moved to the table, pulled out a chair, and gestured, quietly, carefully, for Zara to sit. She sat. She set her Tim Hortons down on the table. She did not apologize for it. Hugh remained standing. He was recalculating. You could almost see it happening behind his eyes. The speed of a man running the numbers on how badly he had just miscalculated. "I didn't know you were." He started. "You didn't ask," Zara said. She wasn't angry. Her voice hadn't changed since she'd walked through the door. Steady, level, the voice of someone who had been through some version of this before and had decided a long time ago that anger cost energy she could use better elsewhere. She opened her own folder, a second one, from deeper in the tote bag, and placed it on the table. "I'd like to start the meeting now," she said. "We're already 8 minutes behind." They started the meeting. Hugh Alcott sat down eventually. He didn't have anywhere else to go. For the next 40 minutes, Zara walked them through her assessment of the Harrington Grand's operational performance over the previous 3 fiscal years. Occupancy trends, revenue per available room, guest satisfaction scores mapped against competitor properties on the same block. She had the numbers memorized. She didn't look at her notes once. Jeffrey Crane took careful, continuous notes. Hugh Alcott contributed twice. Both times he was wrong about the numbers. Both times Zara corrected him without looking up. At 1:47, a hotel employee knocked and entered with a fresh coffee service. The employee, a young South Asian woman in the hotel's navy uniform, glanced at the room, saw who was leading the meeting, and almost stopped walking. She caught herself, set down the tray professionally, and left. But her expression, for just 1 second, had been something like relief. Zara noticed. She always noticed. The meeting ended at 2:53. Zara closed her folder, capped her pen, and stood. "I'd like the refurbishment proposal revised with the cost projections I outlined," she said. "On my desk by December 1st. Digital is fine." Jeffrey nodded. "Of course." Hugh Alcott had his phone out again. His jaw was set in that particular way of men who have lost something they didn't know they had until it was gone. Zara picked up her canvas tote. She picked up her Tim Hortons. Still half full, she'd barely touched it during the meeting. She walked toward the door. She stopped at the door, not because she'd forgotten anything. She turned back to the room. "Mr. Alcott." Her voice was the same as it had been all meeting, the same as it had been when he'd tried to close the door in her face. "I've read Callaway's performance reports on this property. Your occupancy numbers in Q3 were down 6% year over year. Your RevPAR is the lowest on Georgia Street." She tilted her head, the way a person tilts their head when they're being kind about something that isn't kind. "My team will be in touch before your 12 days are up." She left. The door swung shut behind her with a soft, expensive click. In the elevator on the way down, she finished her coffee. The lobby was the same as when she'd arrived. The same marble floor, the same flower arrangement that cost more than most people's hydro bills, the same front desk attendant with the same practiced smile. Zara walked through without stopping. The rain outside had slowed to a mist. She pulled her hood up. She had 2 more meetings before 5 o'clock. But what happened next was not something Zara had planned, and it was not something Hugh Alcott had planned either. Hugh Alcott called his supervisor from the elevator before the doors had fully closed behind Zara. Gavin Lord, Callaway Luxury Group's national vice president. 61, based in Calgary, the kind of executive who built a company by trusting his people and then occasionally discovering he'd misplaced that trust badly. Hugh's version of events took 4 minutes to deliver. In Hugh's version, an unauthorized young woman had somehow accessed the presidential suite under the pretense of being a property owner, presented questionable documentation, and disrupted a key client meeting. Hugh used the word disrupted 4 times. He used the word unauthorized 3 times. He did not use the word asked her to leave. He did not mention the housekeeping comment. He did not mention the staffing agency comment. Gavin Lord listened, asked 2 questions, then asked Hugh to forward the folder Zara had left on the table. The manila one Hugh had never opened. Hugh photographed the contents, sent them. Gavin opened the photos on his laptop at his desk in Calgary. He read for approximately 90 seconds. Then he called his own legal counsel. The call lasted 11 minutes. After the call, Gavin Lord sat very still for a long time. Outside his office window, the Calgary skyline was doing what the Calgary skyline does in November, which is to say nothing particularly comforting. He picked up his phone and called Hugh back. "Did she give her name before you tried to close the door?" Silence on Hugh's end, a specific kind of silence. "Hugh, she had just arrived. I didn't have context for. Did you call her housekeeping?" More silence. "Did you mention the staffing agency?" "I was trying to protect the meeting." "Hugh." Gavin's voice had gone very quiet, the particular quiet of someone who has spent 3 decades managing people and knows exactly what this silence means. "The documentation she presented is legitimate. The ownership transfer is fully executed and registered. We've been in receipt of the change of ownership notice for 27 days, and you were CC'd on that email." He paused. "She owns the building. Dead air. You ask the owner of the building to leave her own hotel. What happened over the next 72 hours, moved the way these things move, when someone at the right level makes a decision and doesn't waffle about it. Gavin Lord called Zara Mensah directly. He reached her at 4:18 that afternoon in the parking garage of a property in Burnaby that was her next stop of the day. He introduced himself. He did not offer an excuse. He described what had happened as a serious failure in conduct by one of our senior employees and asked if she would be willing to have a conversation. Zara said yes. She appreciated that he'd called the same day. She didn't say so. The conversation was professional, measured, 40 minutes long. At the end, Gavin asked what she needed from Callaway to consider their relationship going forward. Zara told him she'd need 3 things. First, a written account from Hugh Alcott, to her, not to HR, not to legal, directly to her, describing exactly what he'd said and exactly why. Second, a review of Callaway's internal diversity training, not a one-day workshop. An independent audit of how front-facing staff and senior management are trained to assess and engage with clients who don't fit their expectation of what a client looks like. Third, the refurbishment proposal revised by December 1st. She did not ask for Hugh's job. Gavin noted this. He asked if he could ask why. Zara said, "I want him to understand what he did. I don't think that happens if he's fired." There was a pause on Gavin's end. A good pause. The kind that means someone is genuinely listening. "All right," he said. Hugh Alcott submitted his written account 4 days later. It took him 4 attempts before Zara's assistant confirmed it was complete enough to be accepted. The first 3 versions contained words like misunderstanding and communication gap and did not have full context. The 4th version did not contain those words. It was 3 pages long. It was specific. It was the most difficult thing Hugh Alcott had written in 30 years of corporate correspondence, and you could feel that in every sentence. He sent it. He never asked for a response. He didn't receive one. The internal audit Zara required was conducted by a third-party firm out of Toronto over 6 weeks. What they found at Callaway wasn't unusual and wasn't unique, and that was exactly the problem. Patterns in which clients presenting as young, non-white, or casually dressed were routed to junior staff, asked more verification questions, and offered fewer proactive services, not because of any written policy, but because of the invisible arithmetic that happens when a company has never been asked to look at it. Callaway shared the audit results internally. Gavin Lord presented them at the executive team meeting himself. He didn't soften the findings. The refurbishment proposal arrived at Zara's desk on November 30th. 1 day early, she approved it with 3 modifications. Meanwhile, something else had been happening. Quietly. In the way things happen quietly when one person with a phone is sitting 2 seats away and nobody notices. A young man named Oliver Sato had been in the hotel lobby at 11:52 a.m. on the day Zara arrived, 22. Japanese-Canadian, a photography student at Emily Carr, who was supposed to be meeting a friend for lunch in the hotel's ground-floor cafe. His friend had canceled. Oliver had stayed because the rain was bad and the coffee was free with the lunch reservation, and he had his camera with him and the lobby light was good. He had watched Zara cross the lobby. He had watched the front desk attendant's expression. He had watched Zara get into the elevator alone. Something about the way she moved, unhurried, unperformed, absolutely self-contained, made him pick up his camera. He photographed the lobby for another 20 minutes. He went home. He forgot about it. 6 days later, a friend sent him a LinkedIn post. A business journalist in Vancouver had written a short piece about Cerulean Capital's growing portfolio in BC hospitality. It mentioned, briefly, that the firm's founder rarely appeared at industry events and had never given a press interview. There was no photo. Oliver looked at his camera roll from the Harrington. There was a single frame. He'd taken it almost by accident. A wide shot from across the lobby, of a young woman in a gray hoodie and worn sneakers crossing a marble floor, tote bag over one shoulder, paper coffee cup in hand. The composition was good. The light through the windows was extraordinary. She looked like she owned the place. He didn't know then that she did. He posted it to his photography account with the caption, Something about the way she walked. By the next morning, the replies had identified her. By afternoon, someone had connected it to the Callaway audit, which had quietly leaked through the industry. By evening, the story was on national news sites. Vancouver entrepreneur mistaken for hotel staff in property she owns. The headline wasn't quite right. She hadn't been mistaken for staff. She'd been dismissed before she could be mistaken for anything at all. But the story spread anyway, and this time it spread the way stories spread when something in them is true enough that people can't stop sharing it. Zara gave no interview. She released no statement. Her firm's website, which had previously featured 11 words in a contact form, now featured 12. Cerulean Capital, building what endures. No names, no photographs, no biography. What she did do, 3 weeks after the story ran, was quietly fund a program through the BC Hotel Association. A bursary providing paid industry placement for Black and Indigenous students entering hospitality management. Full-year placements in senior operational roles, not entry-level positions. The first cohort, she named it after nothing. Not after herself, not after the incident, not after anything. She just funded it and moved on. Hugh Alcott is still at Callaway. He is no longer the regional director of the Harrington Grand. He was not fired. Zara had asked for that, and Gavin Lord had honored it. Hugh manages a smaller portfolio now, 3 mid-range properties in the interior of BC. He completed the bias training the audit required. Whether it changed him is a question only time answers, and time takes longer than a news cycle. Jeffrey Crane is still the Harrington's general manager. He sent Zara a handwritten note 2 weeks after the incident. 3 paragraphs. He did not ask for anything. He just told her he was sorry he hadn't spoken sooner. Zara kept the note. She didn't keep many things. Oliver Sato's photograph ran in a national magazine the following spring. He graduated in June. His graduate exhibition featured the lobby series, including the wide shot of the marble floor and the woman crossing it in worn sneakers. The exhibition was called simply, Who Belongs Here? The Harrington Grand's refurbishment completed the following September. Zara walked through it the same way she'd walked in that first November morning. No announcement, no event, no ribbon. She took notes on her phone. She had a Tim Hortons. On the 38th floor, outside the presidential suite, there was a new piece by a local Musqueam artist. A commission Zara had added to the refurbishment scope at the last minute, a piece her project lead had thought was a strange request for a hotel hallway until they saw it. It was a cedar panel etched with a phrase in Hunknam, the language of the Musqueam people on whose unceded territory the Harrington Grand has always stood. The translation, when the hotel's concierge team looked it up, was, "She was already here. I want to pause here and ask you something. If you had been in that lobby, if you had watched a young woman in a hoodie and worn sneakers walk toward the elevator of a 5-star hotel, no luggage, no assistant, just a tote bag and a Tim Hortons, what would you have thought? Be honest. Not what you wish you would have thought, what you actually would have thought. Because that's the gap this story lives in. The distance between what we see and what we assume. The distance between a gray hoodie and a 61% controlling stake. The distance between a Tim Hortons cup and a woman who built a real estate portfolio from the ground up, alone, starting from $40,000 and double shifts at a distribution center. Hugh Alcott is not a monster. That's the uncomfortable part. He's a man who made a fast, automatic, invisible calculation. The kind we've all made in some version, at some moment, and acted on it without question. The difference is that he had the power to turn that calculation into a door closing in someone's face. Most people who make that calculation never know the cost. This time, someone was counting. If this story stayed with you, if it made you think about what you assume, who you see, and who you don't, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below. Have you ever been in Zara's position? Have you ever honestly been in Hugh's? I read everything. Like and subscribe to Hollow Stories. There are more stories like this one waiting, stories about quiet power, invisible people, and the moment everything shifts. And the next time someone walks into a room and doesn't look the way you expect, wait. Find out who they are before you point at the door.